Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. And so the Samsung Unpacked event just wrapped up. Let's talk about it, specifically about the camera, photo, video function, since that's what we focus on this channel here. And if you see me glancing over here, yes, I'm reading off my notes. It's starting with the Samsung Galaxy S21 and S21 Plus. Now, I already made a video previously talking about all the leaks and basically all the presentation notes that were leaked. So we basically knew already what the hardware was going to look like, but now we got to see what software features they were going to add on and implement in. And there were three standout features that I thought were pretty cool, or at least noteworthy. So the first one was object removal. Now, of course, we'll see how well this works in all sorts of situations, but essentially like content aware in Photoshop or many content aware type applications that have been available in third-party apps for quite some time now. It is interesting to see kind of a built-in first-party feature right in the Samsung apps themselves to be able to draw a line around a person or an object in a photo that you can then remove. Now, obviously, this is only for photos right now. As for video, that would involve pretty intense tracking, and I think phones are a little bit a ways away from that sort of thing, but still pretty cool if that will be something that you can, take a picture right in the stock camera app and then immediately remove an object from it. It's not new technology, but it is pretty cool to see them implement it right in to their own apps. Next up, we have single take. Single take is basically a feature where you can take a video for 15 seconds and it is going to be capturing videos and photos simultaneously. And then once you're done, basically give you a album or gallery view of a bunch of different edits from all the content it captured. And so it's a pretty interesting take. Obviously, it's something I'll have to test out when the phone arrives. With so many social media platforms today, especially us content creators are constantly like, okay, I have to take a picture for that, a video clip for that, a teaser for this, square here, vertical here, boomerang for Instagram, whatever. There's so many areas in which we have to create pieces of content for. Something like this sounds really cool in theory, to be able to basically record one event happening for about 15 seconds and then immediately get a bunch of different edits. Now, for someone like me, and I think many other professionals, probably not going to be used a whole lot because I'm going to disagree with however the phone edits. But for quick stuff, it could be very interesting, or vloggers or anyone who isn't necessarily trying to make it look like a pro grade cinematic whatever. I think this could be a really cool feature. And the last thing that was mentioned during the S21 and S21 Plus line was the director's view. Now, as soon as I heard these words, I got interested, obviously, because that sounds like a pretty pro feature. So what director's view is allows you to see, obviously, what you're recording, but then in little bubbles and rectangles, you'll see your other camera views pop up. It's almost like being in a broadcast studio where you can see all of the available multi-camera options going on, and then you can tap to quickly change the view if you like one camera lens giving a better perspective than the other. Now, they went through this feature relatively quickly, so I'm still curious about things like, is this happening during the record? Can you switch the lenses? Because usually that makes you have to stop recording in order to do that. Is it some sort of weird extra compressed file that's not going to be the equivalent to if you just recorded a individual file using that camera lens? That's always a huge issue. So there's definitely more to look into, but from a bird's eye view, I think it's a very interesting standout feature. I think it's a unique one. So time will tell if it's a gimmick or actually useful. All right, so now let's start talking about the S21 Ultra. Now, a couple kind of tech specs that I think were worth mentioning is you now have a 1500 nit peak brightness display. That is huge. Samsung's always been very bright displays and good in sunlight. And so while you're taking pictures, video, or recording, having a very bright screen is helpful to make sure that you're getting proper exposures and you can actually see what's in the composition. So on this phone, we'll see an upgraded 108 megapixel main sensor, as well as a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and then actually two 10 megapixel telephoto lens, one being a 3x and then a 10x. But the important part here is optical zoom. They're doing something really cool, basically created their own periscope type lens where it is a 10-time optical that has been folded into the phone, because Like, for example, most cameras, obviously the lens sticks out. That would look pretty freaking weird on a phone. So here they actually ingeniously just fold it into the phone itself and then use a series of prisms and mirrors to reflect the light through that lens back onto the sensor. Now in the demo it was hard because they kept showing like the 100 times zoom or whatever, and that looks pretty basically one of those situations where it's like, oh, I want to capture that thing that's really far away just to like show people later. Great, awesome. But you're definitely not going to get like studio portrait quality stuff out of that. Now, one thing that a comment on my last video actually talked about when I was mentioning low light situations was binning. Now, quick backstory on that is when you are shooting something in very low light, a lot of times having a higher megapixel sensor is actually going to bring you more problems, because when you have more pixels on a really small sensor, that means each individual pixel is going to get a lot less light, worse colors, and that means a lot more noise in your low light photos. But today they announced something called Nona binning, and what this is doing essentially here is now taking 9 pixels, putting them in a block, and making them act like 1 pixel. Now that is a complete oversimplification of what the binning process is, but that essentially is going to give you a 9 times larger pixel, which is then going to capture that much more light and color information, and therefore producing a much better low light image. And this is even talking about their night mode, which also was crazy as we know, but that's not really going to be useful for quick stuff because night mode is more long exposure type photography. So this Nona binning, I think, will be very interesting to test, and we may have a great start to 2021 for the low light king of mobile photography and filmmaking. They mentioned this super fast as well, so I don't have a ton of details, but I believe they also mentioned 3 times more dynamic range. I believe they were talking about only photos. We'll see. They didn't really show too much video. And then what is really cool is you will now have 12-bit raw images. So in this mode, as soon as you snap the shutter, it's going to take 2 10-bit photos and combine all of the data to give you a 12-bit raw output. Now, if it truly is as good as they are saying, then that is going to be next level stuff. We've talked about plenty of times on this channel. It doesn't sound like much, the difference between 8-bit, 10-bit, and 12-bit, but it is a huge difference. Now in this graphic right here, you can see how much more colors are in each step of the 8-bit, 10-bit, and 12-bit color range. Obviously, I wish that this was also for video, but again, this is only for the pro mode for photo stills. The 40 megapixel front camera also interests me as well, because for someone like who is vlogging, for example, it will be nice to be able to use the front-facing camera and actually be able to see yourself. Because a lot of times when we're trying to use these phones for more, professional-looking work, we always use the rear cameras because the selfie cameras have always been kind of pretty much crap. And the sample photos that they showed, again, I'm watching a YouTube live stream, so it's super compressed, but they didn't blow me away. But 40 megapixels, if it's at all a bigger sensor, bigger lens, that could be really useful. But I have a feeling it's going to be just as small, and therefore the 40 megapixels is going to create a lot of noise, and you're going to need a lot of light to be in any sort of optimal situation. And last thing is they mentioned that 4K 60 FPS video will be available on all lenses. I talked about this in the last Samsung video I did earlier this week, last week, can't even remember, but my dream was basically to have all cameras on a phone act and be the same. So no matter if you're going ultra wide, regular wide, or telephoto, you can get the same quality of output. And while this is one step closer because now you have the same software features and capturing the same 4K 60 FPS in all the lenses, it does not mean you're going to get the same quality in all those lenses. The ultra wide and the telephoto lenses are still going to look worse than the main sensor until they tell us that all the sensors are the same and all the optics are the same. That dream is still just a dream for now. Sadly, the biggest disappointment of the day was the fact that they literally did not touch upon pro mode for video whatsoever. So clearly this is not the year for major improvements on the software side. Granted, the pro mode on video also is pretty good already. So we'll see if these upgraded hardware components make it more interesting. Now, if you have a Samsung Galaxy S20, I have a feeling that if you're like me and, especially videos are pretty much the most important thing for you, I have a feeling it's not going to be a world of difference from last year's model. Of course, we'll wait to see. I have one already pre-ordered. It's going to be here right on the 29th, and we're going to start busting out content for you guys. Let me know what you guys think about the event down in the comments below. Were there features and hardware or software that you thought were really cool that maybe I missed or didn't talk about enough? And of course, if you're excited to see what the video and photo capabilities of this phone are, definitely get subscribed so you don't miss any content to come. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.